We're going to talk a little bit about how to create gray tones, different values in relief printing. We're going to talk about some professional printmakers, what they've done, and we're also going to show some student work. Here are some examples of both student work and professional work. Now, this student took the sky around the mountain and he made lines perpendicular to each other. It's called cross-hatching. Now, he got pretty aggressive with it, but it worked out okay. Now, this student, this is a piece that he called Winter Tree, and he has all these lines that are basically running parallel to each other with slight curves in it. And so it gave a nice texture to the bark. He's able to put the knots in and different things. So it really gave the tree a lot of interest. And it also gave it a gray tone. This is a simple still life by a student from a number of years ago. I love the way that she presented the vessels, and she did all the gray tones with basically horizontal lines, and they curve slightly on the objects that have a roundness to them. Now, this student was able to use the direction of the fur and the mane and everything to carve those lines in. It shows texture, it shows volume of the mane, and it gave her a chance to put highlights in areas like this, around the brow. Really nice job. This is a piece that was done by an art professor from a number of years ago, Roman Andrus. It's simply a goat, but you can see how the cuts that he follows the fur coming down. Just some really nice texture and what I think is a very nice small piece. This is a work by a local artist, Kent Goodliff. This is called at Sinawava, which is down at Zion's National Park. And it's simply some trees and some grasses. He's got rocks in here. But you can see how he uses the directional carving to create the needles on the pine trees. Also different directions to give the bark nice texture, and the grasses the same way. Another one of his pieces, this is called Grafton Revisited. Grafton is a ghost town in southern Utah, and you can see how he created gray tones between the mountains and things. These are all cut with hash marks going parallel to each other. Then he gets into the shingles and he changes the directions of the hash marks to give both texture and gray tones. A very nice piece. This is also one of his pieces, Can't Give Lift. This is a bell tower in a church in Park City. And you can see that he uses hash marks going perpendicular to each other to create the shakes and shingles and also the shadows. And as he creates the tower with the beams going around and the corbels and different things, he uses different directions of his hash marks, and it just makes a beautiful, strong piece. This is a work by one of our students just from last year. And what she did was she created the image of the bones from the hand, and then she just started cutting hash marks, and she would change direction, and it created a wonderful pattern. And so it not only created gray tones, but a wonderful background for her composition. So talking about hash marks and gray tones and different things like that brings us right into our next project. And what it is pattern backgrounds. And your background here is referring to the negative space. And so the goal is to create a composition where the negative space is as interesting as the positive space. Okay, this is a very simple design, basically parallel perpendicular lines progressively working to the center. This is a work where there is very little negative space. You can see the mountains behind the building, and then he created a little bit of interest with the sky. Okay, this student created, it's hard to see, but there's a series of mountain ridges that run along here. And so there's not a lot of variation between the sky and the ground, but it gave some interesting, gray tones, different things. It's kind of nice. Okay. Now, this is called The Range, one of our students from a couple of years ago. And what she did here was just cut out deep grooves to get rid of the background, but then she inked all the high ridges. And I really think it came out quite nice. Okay, you're going to see another work by this young artist. This was her still life, and she decided to do something with the background, so she started doing these swirls. And you can almost think that this is reminiscent of Van Gogh with his paintings. Another student around the same time it's just called Lighthouse. And now you're starting to see this swirl in the sky, and I'm sure that she was influenced by Vincent van Gogh. This is the same girl that did the lion head, and she and her family had just returned from a dive trip down in Mexico. And so this is an underwater scene, so it works very well. You see the surface of the bottom of the water, or the channel, and then the swirls are the currents of the water. Okay, a really fun piece, fantasy piece. And so you've got two flowers that have been with human aspects to them in their face. And so all of the negative space is just filled up with all these wonderful swirls and everything. Now this was the artist that you saw a moment ago, and that did the still life. Now she's from Alaska, and she was very influenced by the culture of Alaska and the wildlife and everything. So here's a series of whales, and as they're swimming along, they're churning up the water, and so everything above them has the big swirls, everything below them the small swirls. Just a very nice example of a decorative background taking up, the decoration taking up the negative space. So that is your assignment, to create a composition that is not only intriguing in its positive space, but just as intriguing in the negative space. So the block that you'll use for this project is a 4x6 soft cut. And the paper that you'll be using is going to be basically 9x6 or 9x7. You'll enjoy the soft cuts. You've used them for at least one project thus far, but you don't have to use a bench hook for them. It's like cutting through cheese. Students usually really love the soft cuts. So have fun and create something that has a beautiful background as well as the positive space.